Howdy everyone. Well, the Targa strip that I've been working on is finally in place, and so far it has come out really well. It's actually turning out better than I had expected, just because I had attempted to make one before and it was a real pain. So I trashed that one and started over. And like I had talked about in the previous video, I made a template out of some brown paper. It might be better to use something heavier than this. Something more like a poster board might be better. Make it nice and wide so that when you have it laid over the roll bar seam area, it's nice and wide, so it's not critical how much it moves around to get it to lay flat. That's what had happened with my other one. I had cut the strip to size, and then I tried to fit it on the canopy, and as it comes down the side, you can see that it needs to sweep forward. And as it came down, in order to get it to lay flat, it swept forward, and it wasn't wide enough back here, and you could start to see the roll bar underneath. So when I made my paper template, I made it nice and wide, and I taped it down nice and flat, and then I poked through it into all of the screw heads, which is what you can see here. Not the little black X's, but the actual screw, the Phillips screw heads left a mark. And then I transferred that onto the aluminum strip, and then even after I had those marked, I triple, quadruple checked the measurements. You can see I have a center line drawn on the template. I had a center line drawn on the aluminum strip, and then using the center line as a reference, I measured out to each location. And then I double checked that measurement on the aluminum strip. And then I also, as I drilled the aluminum strip and fitted it, I started here in the center, and I drilled these first two holes, clecoed those in place. And then I unclecoed, measured from this hole to this location, and made sure that that matched the same location on the template. And when I was happy with that, I would drill a small hole, bring it back over, cleco it, and then look through that hole to see where it lined up on the cross of the Phillips screw underneath. And if I had to make an adjustment, I'd make an adjustment, drill it to final size, dimple it, and then I'd come back and I'd do that on both sides to stay symmetric. So then I'd cleco these four in place, make sure it fit, take the clecos off. On the paper template, I'd measure from the center line to the next location. Then I would measure the strip from the center line to the same location, make sure that was the same. On the template, I'd measure from the last hole that I had done to the next hole, compare that to the template, drill a small hole in that location, put the strip back on, re-cleco it, look through the hole to see where it lined up on the cross of the Phillips head screw underneath, made my adjustments, drilled it, dimple, and I kept doing that process. It's taken me a couple of days to get this done, just because I was picking at it a little bit here and there after work. And today is the first day that I've had a decent chunk of time to actually work on it. So very tedious, but it has come out really well. It sits really nice around the perimeter, all the way around. There isn't really any noticeable buckling between points, and it lays really nice along the back of the back edge, along the front of the window. So at this point, what I need to do is trim up the ends and then work on the actual size. I have to obviously make sure I keep my edge distance on the front half, but I don't want this any wider than it needs to be. So if the roll bar underneath is like back here, I'm going to take this back edge and cut it back, but it's pretty close to the way that it is. But I just want to clean it up. This was just rough cut on a bandsaw, so it's very wavy, and it's not a nice uniform shape. So that's next, is to just go ahead and clean up the edges, cut off the ends, and then I can scuff it up and paint it, and then permanently install it. So quite pleased. It's actually, like I said, it's turned out quite a bit better than I had expected. So next up, trim it, finish it on the sides, get it nice and clean, and scuff it and paint it. All right, that's that for now. I will talk to you guys here later. Howdy, everyone. Alrighty, well, let's see. I'm trying to regroup here mentally, trying to figure out where I had left off. I think it was the strip around the back of the canopy. So I believe I have finally made it. I believe at this point I am completely finished with everything canopy. So obviously the canopy frame, the skins, the plexiglass bubble, the roll bar, the rear window, the strip along the back, custom-made side skins. I think I am finished with the canopy. The only thing left to do that I can think of at this point is paint. And originally I was planning on potentially taking the canopy off of the airplane and painting everything, and maybe even a little bit back here. But the various areas where I have used fuel tank sealant, I'm not convinced that fuel tank sealant is completely cured. That may take another month or more for all I know. So I don't want to paint it. And it's getting to the point now weather-wise where the weather itself is not very friendly to painting. So at this point, I think I'm content enough to forego painting altogether. I may wait and do that next year. But from a construction standpoint, I believe that this, thankfully, is finally finished. Again, not hard, but incredibly tedious, and you really, really got to be on top of your game and think of everything before you make a move, and be very patient. So it's been a very long process. I believe I was kind of trying to go back through my pictures and try to figure out when I first started fooling with the frame and this front skin, because that's kind of where it all starts, if I remember correctly. And I believe that was back in May, maybe? Don't really remember, but it is now toward the end of September. So it's been a very long process working on basically one item, which is not entirely true, right? Because you do frame and skins, and then that kind of morphs into canopy work, and then that morphs into rear window, and then at some point you also have to do your all of your latch mechanism stuff for the canopy. And you can see here I've got my latching ears in, and the latching handle is in, that kind of stuff. You can see where I had used a fuel tank sealant, and it's smushed between the canopy and the frame, and smushed between the rear aluminum strip and the canopy. This is probably all going to get painted just for aesthetic reasons when the canopy is open and you can see all this mess. I'd rather hide that with some paint potentially. But like I said, I'm not painting anytime soon, so I'm not going to worry about it. So that's it, my friends. Canopy is done. I'm going to move on to something else. So that's the next issue, right? What is the something else? So here's my thought process. I'll share this with you real quick. According to the instructions, I believe the next thing to do is the landing gear. Now I'm doing a tail dragger. You can see I have no room in the back to start working on the tail wheel. And on the tail dragger, the main landing gear mounts to the engine mount. I don't want to put the engine mount on quite yet because it's going to take up more space. And I'm not ready to mount that because I still want to work on some firewall stuff potentially. The other thing is with the landing gear on, you can see that the fuselage is about a foot, maybe 14 inches off of the ground, more like a foot. With the landing gear on, this thing is going to be way up high off the ground. And I still need to work on avionics stuff. And I still need to rivet this front skin once I get all my avionics figured out. So I don't want this thing up on the landing gear, 10 feet off the ground and then try to get down into the fuselage to rivet this and work on avionics and all that. All of that kind of work would be 100% easier with this fuselage exactly where it is right now. So landing gear is off the table. I could do avionics next, but I choose to wait on that just because this year, as always, I'm planning on taking a big chunk of time off of work around Christmas. So I'm saving all my avionic work for that. For me personally, I just think it would be a lot of fun. Dead of winter, a big chunk of free time away from work, out here in the shop, doing avionics, installing avionics, laying out the avionics, making wire bundles, connecting everything, powering up stuff for the first time. I'd like to save that for my vacation time. So I think the next logical thing is going to be the engine work. Now, if you guys remember, if you've been following me, this is basically like a new old stock engine, if you will. This was built by Aero Sport Power back in 2012. It was test run on their engine stand, and that's it. It's never been mounted to an airplane. It's never been flown. It's never had anything done to it other than a new build and test run. I've got all the documentation, all the paperwork originally from Aero Sport. It's been sitting like you see now for years and years and years and years, so it is absolutely filthy. And like I've said before, I hate the color. I can't stand the way this thing looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. I'm going to start a new video. This is going to wrap up the Canopy series. So that is done. I'm going to start a new video and a new series concerning the engine work. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to stop briefly here and I'm going to come back and start talking engines. All right. See you guys later.